The night you remember who you are. You have been walking through your days, wearing a mask that no longer fits. The mirror shows you a stranger, someone who learned to smile at the right moments and say the right words, but whose eyes hold secrets even from themselves. Tonight, something different calls to you from the spaces between sleep and waking. The world has taught you that healing means forgetting, that strength means silence, that love means earning your place at tables where you were never meant to beg for crumbs. But your soul knows differently. It remembers the child who once believed in magic, who saw faces in clouds and heard stories in the wind. You've been carrying weight that was never yours to bear. Generations of unspoken grief, patterns of fear that wrap around your throat like inherited silk scarves, beautiful but suffocating. The stories you tell yourself about who you should be have become prison walls built from other people's blueprints. Tonight, you begin the journey back to yourself, not the self you've been told to become, but the one who was always there, waiting beneath the layers of shoulds and shouldn'ts, waiting in the quiet places where your real voice lives. The path leads inward through corridors lined with memories you've been afraid to touch. Each step takes you deeper into territories your conscious mind has marked as forbidden. But fear is often the guardian of treasure, and what you've been running from may be exactly what you need to reclaim. You are not broken. You never were. What you've been calling damage is often wisdom wearing the clothes of pain. What you've been calling weakness is often strength that hasn't found its true form yet. Tonight, you discover the difference. The journey begins with a single breath, deeper than the ones you've been taking while holding yourself together. It begins with the radical act of being gentle with the parts of yourself you've been at war with. It begins with coming home. In the distance you can see lights flickering like ancient torches along a path you recognize but cannot name. Your feet know where to go, even when your mind resists. This is the walk you've been postponing, the conversation you've been avoiding, the reunion with the parts of yourself you sent away long ago. You walk toward the first light, and as you approach, you realize it illuminates a doorway, not to somewhere else, but to somewhere deeper. The doorway to the country of yourself, where you are both the visitor and the one who has been waiting to welcome yourself home. The night air carries scents of rain and earth, of growing things, and the kind of darkness that promises dawn. Above you, stars arrange themselves in patterns that seem to spell your real name, the one you knew before the world taught you to answer to anything else. You pause at the threshold, feeling the weight of all the times you've stood at doorways like this and turned away. All the moments when you almost trusted, almost spoke your truth, almost believed you deserved love without earning it. Tonight feels different. Tonight you stay. Your hand reaches for the door, and you notice it trembles slightly. Not from fear, though fear is present, but from recognition, from the deep knowing that what waits on the other side is not a stranger, but the part of yourself you've been homesick for all your life. The door opens, not with a creak, but with a whisper, like an exhale held too long, finally finding release. Inside, candlelight dances on walls that seem to breathe with life. The air tastes of possibility and the kind of safety you thought existed only in fairy tales. This is where the real journey begins, not in changing who you are, but in remembering, not in becoming someone new, but in peeling away the layers that never belonged to you in the first place. Tonight, you stop running from yourself and start walking toward home. You step inside, and the door closes softly behind you. There is no going back now, but that's not loss. That's liberation. The path forward leads through rooms you've never seen, but somehow recognize, toward conversations you've never had, but always needed, toward a reunion that has been waiting for you since the day you first learned to hide. The first room you enter is filled with mirrors, but these are not the cruel ones that have shown you only flaws and failures. These mirrors reflect truth, and truth is always kinder than the stories you've been telling yourself. In their surfaces, you begin to see not who you've been taught to be, but who you actually are. And who you are is not a mistake. Who you are is not too much or too little. Who you are is the exact medicine the world needs, delivered in the only package it could come in. You, exactly as you are, healing and whole and worthy of love. The reflection smiles back at you, and for the first time in longer than you can remember, you do not look away. The room of forgotten dreams. In the second room, the walls are lined with shelves that stretch from floor to ceiling, each one holding glass jars filled with swirling mist and colored light. You approach carefully, drawn by a soft humming that seems to emanate from the containers themselves. As your eyes adjust to the ethereal glow, realize what you're seeing. These are the dreams you abandoned. Each jar holds a vision you once carried, a hope you once nurtured, a possibility you once believed in before the world taught you to be practical. The young artist who wanted to paint sunsets, the healer who believed touch could mend broken hearts, the writer who saw stories in every shadow, the dancer who moved like water when no one was watching. You reach for one jar, and as your fingers make contact with the cool glass, memories flood back. You remember the exact moment you put this dream away, the voice that told you it was foolish, the fear that whispered you weren't good enough, the day you decided safe was better than sorry. The jar grows warm in your hands, and the mist inside begins to swirl more rapidly. These dreams were never lost, only stored, like seeds waiting for the right season. They have been patient in their darkness, holding their essence intact, waiting for you to remember that dreams don't die from being postponed. They only grow more precious, more concentrated, like wine aging in forgotten cellars. The humming grows louder, and you understand it's not coming from the jars themselves, but from your own heart recognizing what it thought was gone forever. These dreams are not accusers pointing at wasted time. They are old friends welcoming you back with the kind of unconditional love that asks no questions about where you've been, only celebrates that you've returned. You begin to walk between the shelves, reading labels written in your own childhood handwriting. The day I stopped singing, the year I chose safety over joy, the moment I believed I wasn't enough. Each label tells a story of a small death, a little surrender, a dream deferred so long it seemed to disappear. But nothing disappears entirely. Everything waits. The capacity for wonder you possessed as a child lives in your cells, encoded in your DNA, woven into the fabric of who you are beneath who you've learned to be. The dreams you've abandoned are not your failures, but your future, waiting to be reclaimed by someone brave enough to believe they deserve beautiful things. You set the first jar back on its shelf and notice something remarkable. Where your hands touch the glass, it has become transparent, and the mist inside has begun to settle into recognizable shapes, images of what could still be, visions of what wants to emerge through you, possibilities that have been waiting in the wings of your life for their cue to enter stage. This room is not a museum of lost chances but a warehouse of potential. Every dream you see here is still alive, still possible, still calling your name in frequencies only your authentic self can hear. The only question is whether you're ready to stop mourning what you thought was over and start celebrating what's ready to begin. You notice a ladder against one wall, leading to higher shelves filled with jars that glow more brightly than the others. These hold the dreams you haven't even dared to dream yet, the ones your soul has been protecting from your rational mind, keeping them safe until you are ready to believe in magic again. The ladder creaks slightly as you begin to climb, each rung bringing you closer to possibilities you've never allowed yourself to consider. Up here, the air tastes different, thinner, but somehow more nourishing, like breathing at the peak of a mountain where the view changes everything you thought you knew about the world. At the top shelf, you find a jar unlike all the others. It doesn't glow from within, but seems to absorb and reflect the light from everything around it. The label, written in script you don't recognize, but somehow can read, says simply, "The dream you are." As you lift this jar, you understand that you are not just the dreamer, but the dream itself. Some cosmic consciousness once imagined you into being, dreamed you into existence with all your particular gifts and struggles and beauty. You are not trying to achieve some dream outside yourself. You are the fulfillment of a dream that is still dreaming itself through you. The jar in your hands begins to warm, then to vibrate gently, then to sing in harmonies that make your bones remember they are made of stardust. This is the dream that dreams through you, the one that never needs to be put on a shelf because it cannot be separated from your breath, your heartbeat, your simple presence in the world. You climb down the ladder with this jar still humming in your hands, understanding now that all the other dreams, all the ones you thought you'd lost, and all the ones you've yet to discover, are just facets of this one great dream, the dream of being fully, authentically, courageously yourself. As you prepare to leave this room, you notice the shelves themselves have begun to glow. The dreams you've touched, the ones you've acknowledged and reclaimed, are lighting up the entire space. This is how healing works. Not by finding what's missing, but by remembering what was always there, waiting for your attention, your permission, your belief. You place the jar labeled the dream you are, not back on a shelf, but in the pocket closest to your heart. Some dreams are meant to be carried, not stored. Some possibilities are meant to walk with you, breathing when you breathe, seeing through your eyes the world they want to help create. The door to the next room beckons, but you take one last look around this repository of sleeping magic. The light is growing brighter now, and you realize that by simply being here, by simply remembering, you've awakened something that had been waiting in darkness for far too long. You are not here to choose between dreams, but to integrate them, to understand that the life you're meant to live is spacious enough to hold all the beauty you've ever imagined and more. The practical and the magical are not enemies, but dance partners, waiting for music only you can provide. As you walk toward the next door, the humming follows you, a soundtrack of possibility that will accompany you wherever this journey leads. Behind you, the jars continue to glow, no longer forgotten but remembered, no longer abandoned but reclaimed, no longer separate from you but part of the constellation of light you carry into the world. The Garden of Shadows. The third door opens not to a room, but to a garden at midnight, where moonlight falls through leaves like silver rain. Here nothing is quite what it seems. The flowers that bloom in this place are dark velvet purple and midnight blue, their beauty stark against the luminous pale stones that line the pathways. This is where you meet the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide. The air here carries scents you cannot name, but somehow recognize. The earthy smell of truth, the metallic taste of unexpressed anger, the sweet decay of grief allowed to compost into wisdom. Every step along the shadowed path makes a different sound, as if you're walking on memories that have been pressed into the earth and are now speaking back to you. You've spent so much energy trying to be the light that you forgot light needs darkness to have meaning. In this garden, you discover that your shadow is not your enemy, but your hidden strength, not your failure, but your untapped power, not what's wrong with you, but what's been waiting to be integrated into who you're becoming. Or the first plant you encounter looks like a rose bush, but instead of thorns, it has small, sharp mirrors growing from its stems. As you lean closer, each mirror shows you a different face you wear in the world. The people pleaser, the perfectionist, the one who says yes when you mean no, the one who shrinks to fit into spaces too small for your soul. These mirrors don't judge, they simply reflect. They show you the masks you've created not from vanity, but from survival. The ways you've learned to protect yourself by becoming what others needed you to be. But protection that goes on too long becomes prison, and adaptation that never ends becomes self-abandonment. You reach out to touch one of the mirror thorns, and instead of cutting you, it dissolves at your touch. The mask it showed disappears, and underneath you glimpse something startling. Your real face, the one you wear when no one is watching, the one that carries both your light and your darkness with equal grace. Moving deeper into the garden, you find a tree whose fruit hangs heavy and dark, almost black in the moonlight. A small sign at its base reads, "The things you swallow." These are all the words you never said, the anger you never expressed, the boundaries you never set, the truths you never spoke because you were afraid of what would happen if you stopped being agreeable. One fruit falls into your palm as you pass, and when you bite into it, the taste is complex, bitter at first, then sweet, then something beyond both. It tastes like honesty, like the relief of finally saying what needs to be said, like the freedom that comes when you stop carrying other people's feelings and start honoring your own. The juice runs down your chin, dark as night sky, and you understand that what you've been calling negative emotions are often positive action in disguise. Your anger is your inner warrior trying to protect what you love. Your sadness is your deep capacity for caring. Your anxiety is your wisdom trying to prepare you for challenges ahead. You walk on, and the path brings you to a small pond where the water is so still it looks like dark glass. But as you approach, you see that the surface is not reflecting the moon above, but something else entirely. It's showing you the child you were before you learned to be ashamed of your intensity, your sensitivity, your way of seeing magic where others saw ordinary. This child looks up at you from the water with eyes wide and trusting, still believing in goodness, still expecting love, still untrained in the art of hiding. You kneel beside the pond and place your hand on the water's surface, and the child reaches up from beneath as if to touch your palm through the liquid boundary between past and present. In that moment of contact, you remember what you forgot, that the very qualities you've spent years trying to manage, control, or eliminate are the source of your power. Your sensitivity is not weakness, but superpower. Your depth is not darkness, but richness. Your intensity is not too much, but exactly enough to change what needs changing in the world. The child in the water smiles, and you realize they never went anywhere. They've been here all along, waiting in the shadowed places of your psyche, holding on to the dreams and the courage and the wild hope you thought you'd outgrown. They've been the guardian of everything authentic about you, keeping it safe while you learned how to navigate a world that often rewards conformity over creativity. You sit by the pond for a long time, having a conversation without words with this younger version of yourself. You tell them about the journey that brought you here, about the ways you've learned to survive, about the masks you've worn, and the reasons you wore them. And they tell you, in the language of images and feelings, about what they've been protecting, about the gifts they've kept alive despite everything. As you rise to continue your journey, the child in the water stands too, and you understand something profound. They're not staying behind in the reflection. They're coming with you, integrated. Now rather than hidden, honored rather than ignored, loved rather than merely tolerated. The garden path curves toward what looks like a grove of trees. But as you approach, you see they're not trees at all, but figures made of shadow and moonlight, each one representing a part of yourself you've disowned. The angry one, the selfish one, the one who wants too much, the one who cares too little, the one who dreams too big, the one who feels too much. Instead of turning away, you walk among them, like you're greeting old friends at a reunion, because that's what this is. A reunion with the parts of yourself you sent into exile, the ones you decided were unacceptable, but who were often just trying to get your needs met in the only ways they knew how. Each shadow figure you approach dissolves into particles of light that swirl around you like stardust before settling into your body, into your bones, into your bloodstream. You're not casting out your darkness, but embracing it, not eliminating your shadow, but dancing with it, not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. The garden begins to change around you as this integration happens. The dark flowers start to bloom, colors you've never seen, their beauty no longer hidden but celebrated. The paths grow brighter, not from external light, but from the radiance that emerges when all parts of yourself finally come home. At the garden's center, you find a fountain whose water flows upward instead of down, defying gravity the way truth defies convention. The water tastes like forgiveness, like the end of the war you've been waging against yourself, like the beginning of a love affair with your own complexity. You cup the water in your hands and drink deeply, and as you do, you feel something shift inside you. Not a healing of what was broken, but a recognition of what was always whole. Not a fixing of what was wrong, but an honoring of what was always right. Just hidden, just waiting, just protecting itself until it was safe to emerge. The fountain's upward flowing water catches the moonlight and creates rainbows in the darkness, and you understand that this is what you are, a being of such depth and complexity that your darkness creates beauty, your struggles generate strength, your wounds become wisdom when held in the light of understanding. As you prepare to leave the garden, you notice you're casting a different shadow now. Not the small, constrained shadow of someone trying to take up less space, but the full, expansive shadow of someone who has reclaimed all of themselves. Your shadow now looks like wings, the library of unspoken words. Beyond the shadow garden lies a structure that appears to be built from crystallized silence, its walls translucent and humming with potential energy. As you approach, you realize this is where all the words that were never spoken have come to rest, organized not by alphabet but by the depth of feeling behind them. The doors part at your approach with a sound like a held breath finally released. Inside, the air shimmers with unvoiced truths thick enough to taste. Shelves stretch impossibly high, filled not with books, but with glowing orbs, each one containing something you meant to say, but never did. Some pulse with a red urgency of anger never expressed. Others glow blue with sadness that found no voice. Still others shine gold with love that never found the courage to announce itself. You move through the aisles slowly, drawn by resonances you feel in your chest rather than sounds you hear with your ears. Each orb you pass whispers without making sound, sharing its story through vibrations that travel directly to your heart. Here is the time you wanted to tell your father you forgave him. There is the moment you should have said no instead of yes. Over there, glowing like a small sun, is the declaration of love you kept locked behind your teeth because the timing never felt right. The silence here is not empty but full, pregnant with all the communication that got lost between impulse and action, between heart and mouth, between truth and fear. You realize that every word you swallowed, every feeling you suppressed, every authentic response you traded for safety has been preserved here waiting for the moment when you'd be brave enough to reclaim them. You reach for an orb that pulses with familiar pain, and as your fingers close around it, you remember. This is what you wanted to say to your younger self the day you learned that being sensitive was supposedly a weakness. The orb grows warm in your palm, and suddenly you can hear your own voice, strong and clear, speaking the words that needed to be said decades ago. Your sensitivity is not your burden, but your gift. The world needs people who feel deeply, who notice the subtle changes in energy, who can sense what others need before they ask. Don't let anyone teach you to numb yourself. Your feelings are information. Your intuition is intelligence. Your empathy is a superpower masquerading as vulnerability. The words echo through the crystal library, and other orbs begin to glow more brightly in response. Truth spoken awakens more truth. One authentic expression gives permission for others to emerge from their silent hiding places. You continue through the library, and the next section contains orbs that pulse with darker colors. These hold the words you were too afraid to speak because they carried anger, disappointment, or disagreement. The ones that would have disrupted the peace you thought you were keeping by staying quiet, not realizing that false peace built on unspoken resentments is no peace at all. One orb practically vibrates off its shelf, demanding attention. You lift it carefully, and instantly you're transported back to a moment years ago when someone you trusted betrayed that trust, and you said nothing because you didn't want to cause a scene. The orb shows you what you should have said then, and what you can still say now. When you broke your promise to me, it hurt. When you acted like it didn't matter, it hurt more. I deserve relationships where my feelings are considered, where agreements are honored, where I don't have to pretend betrayal is acceptable to keep the peace. The relief of finally hearing these words, even spoken to the crystal air of this impossible library, brings tears to your eyes. How many relationships have you damaged by trying to preserve them through silence? How many parts of yourself have you sacrificed on the altar of avoiding conflict? How many times have you chosen temporary harmony over authentic connection? You move deeper into the library, where the orbs grow larger and more luminous. This section contains the words you were too afraid to speak because they carried too much love, too much hope, too much vulnerability. The declarations that felt too big for your mouth, too precious to risk, too important to chance being rejected or misunderstood. Here is the orb that holds everything you wanted to say to your best friend before they moved away. There is the one containing the poetry that wanted to spill out of you during that sunset when you felt connected to everything alive. Over there, glowing like captured starlight, are all the times you wanted to tell someone they were beautiful, important, valued, but worried it would sound strange or inappropriate or too intense. You lift this last orb with both hands, feeling its weight of withheld appreciation. As it warms to your touch, you hear your voice, speaking words you never dared to say. You should know that your presence in the world makes it brighter. The way you listen makes people feel heard. The way you care makes caring seem normal instead of naive. You are not too much, and you never were. You are exactly the amount of wonderful the world needs. The orb dissolves in your hands, but the words don't disappear. They merge with your bloodstream, your breath, your bones. They become part of you again, ready to be spoken to the people who need to hear them, starting with yourself as you continue through the library. You notice something remarkable happening. Each orb you acknowledge, each suppressed word you reclaim, seems to create space for new ones to form. The library is not just a repository of the past, but a generator of future possibilities. Every authentic expression you retrieve from silence creates capacity for more truth to be born. You find yourself in a section where the orbs are still forming, swirling with colors that shift and change. These contain the words you're still afraid to speak, the truths that are still crystallizing in your consciousness, the authentic expressions that are still gathering courage to emerge from the safety of silence into the risk of sound. One orb draws your attention because it seems to pulse in rhythm with your heartbeat. You approach it carefully, sensing its importance before you even touch it. When you do, the truth it contains floods through you with such clarity that you gasp. This is what you've been trying to say your entire life. The message your soul came here to deliver. The words that are uniquely yours to speak to the world. But these words are still forming, still choosing their shape, still deciding when and how they want to be born into sound. You understand that this orb is not meant to be opened now, but carried with you, allowed to ripen in its own time, trusted to know when the moment is right for its truth to emerge. You slip this orb into the pocket of your heart, next to the jar containing the dream you are. Some gifts from these inner realms are meant to be immediately integrated, while others are meant to be incubated, gestated, allowed to mature in the warm darkness of your inner knowing until they're ready to be born into the world as words, actions, creations, offerings. The library has one more section, its shelves nearly empty except for a few orbs that glow with such pure light they're almost painful to look at directly. These contain the words that are spoken not with your voice, but with your life, not with your mouth, but with your choices, not with sound, but with presence. Here are stored all the ways your authentic being speaks without words. The kindness that flows from you when you're not trying to be kind. The wisdom that emerges when you stop trying to be wise. The love that radiates when you stop trying to prove you're lovable. These orbs hold the truth that your greatest message to the world is not what you say, but who you are when you're brave enough to be yourself. As you prepare to leave the library, you notice that your visit has changed its architecture. Where there were once walls of crystallized silence, there are now windows that let in light and air. The space is no longer sealed, but breathing, no longer closed, but open to new words being born, new truths finding their voice, new expressions of authenticity flowing from the deep well of who you're becoming. You carry with you not just the reclaimed words, but the understanding that silence and speech are both choices, both powerful, both necessary. The key is knowing when each serves love and when it serves fear, when staying quiet protects what's sacred, and when it betrays what's true. The next door awaits, but you pause to listen to the symphony that now fills the library. Not the sound of words being spoken, but the sound of truth being honored, of authenticity being valued, of voice being reclaimed, not as weapon, but as gift, not as demand, but as offering to a world hungry for real words spoken from real hearts by real people, brave enough to risk being heard. The chamber of ancient patterns. The fourth passage leads to a circular room where the walls themselves seem to be alive, covered in patterns that shift and flow like liquid tapestry. These are not decorations but living but records, the energetic blueprints of every family line, every ancestral wound, every inherited pattern that has been passed down through generations like invisible DNA. As your eyes adjust to the strange light that emanates from the moving patterns themselves, you begin to recognize familiar shapes within the swirling designs. Here is the way anger moves through your family line, quick to ignite but afraid to burn cleanly. There is the pattern of love that gives everything but struggles to receive, passed down from grandmother to mother to child, like a beautiful, exhausting inheritance. You approach one wall where a particularly intricate pattern catches your attention. As you trace its movements with your eyes, you realize you're looking at the map of how your lineage handles grief. The pattern shows you generations of hearts that learn to swallow sorrow, to function through loss, to keep moving, because stopping might mean drowning in what was lost. But this is not just observation. As you stand in this chamber, you can feel these patterns as they live within your own body, your own behaviors, your own ways of moving through the world. The tight shoulders that have been carried by every woman in your family. The way the men learn to disappear emotionally when things got difficult. The unconscious agreement that love means sacrifice, that happiness must be earned, that peace is a luxury the family line has never been able to afford. You place your hand on the wall where your family's grief pattern flows, and something extraordinary happens. Your touch doesn't stop the pattern, but it changes it. The harsh, angular movements begin to soften. The tight controlled spirals start to open into flowing curves. You realize that you are not just observing these ancestral patterns, but actively healing them through your conscious attention. This chamber exists outside of linear time. Your healing here ripples, both backward and forward, touching the grandmother who never learned to cry, and the granddaughter who will inherit permission to feel. The patterns on the walls begin to show you not just how pain has been passed down, but how healing can be passed along, how one person's journey to wholeness can break cycles that have run in families for generations. You move to another section where the patterns glow with golden light. These represent the gifts that have also been passed down through your lineage, the resilience that has carried your family through impossible circumstances, the creativity that has found expression even in the most limiting situations, the love that has persisted despite all the ways it has been wounded or disappointed. Here you see the pattern of your great-grandfather's hands, capable of building something beautiful from nothing. There is your grandmother's ability to find meaning in suffering, to transform pain into wisdom. Over there flows the pattern of your mother's fierce protectiveness, sometimes misguided, but always rooted in love. As you acknowledge these gifts, the patterns grow brighter, more defined. You understand that healing doesn't mean rejecting everything from your family line, but learning to keep what serves while transforming what doesn't. You are not trying to escape your heritage, but to evolve it to be the generation that breaks the harmful patterns while preserving the precious ones. The walls show you something else, how the same ancestral wound can become an ancestral gift when met with consciousness. The family pattern of feeling too much, too deeply, which caused so much shame for previous generations, transforms in your hands into the gift of empathy. The lineage of being too sensitive becomes the inheritance of wisdom, insight, healing, capacity. You walk to the center of the room, where a single chair sits beneath a shaft of light that falls from somewhere impossibly high above. This is the chair of conscious choice, where you get to decide which patterns you will carry forward and which ones will end with you. Not through force or rejection, but through the gentle, powerful act of bringing unconscious patterns into conscious awareness. As you sit in this chair, you can feel the presence of all your ancestors, not as burdens, but as witnesses to your healing. They gather around you like a cloud of loving attention, all those who came before, including the ones who couldn't break free from their own inherited patterns. They are here not to pressure you, but to support you in doing what they couldn't do for themselves. In this moment, you speak to them directly, your voice carrying through dimensions of time and space. I see the patterns you pass down, and I understand they were your best attempt to survive, to love, to protect what mattered to you. I honor your struggles and your gifts. Now I choose to transform what no longer serves while treasuring what enriches our lineage. The patterns on the walls begin to move faster, like a river that has been dammed, finally finding its natural flow. Colors you've never seen before begin to appear in the designs, representing new possibilities being born, new ways of being that honor the past while creating space for unprecedented futures. You realize that sitting in this chair of conscious choice doesn't mean you're alone in your healing. You are surrounded by the love of ancestors who wanted better for their descendants, but didn't have the tools or awareness to create it. Their hope, their dreams for future generations, their unfinished healing, all of it flows toward you, not as pressure, but as support for the work you're doing. The light above you intensifies, and you understand that this is the light of consciousness itself, the awareness that transforms everything it touches. In this light, family patterns that once felt like fate reveal themselves to be choices. Behaviors that seemed inevitable show themselves to be changeable. Ways of being that felt genetically encoded prove to be simply habits that can be updated with love and patience. As you rise from the chair, you notice that your shadow on the wall has joined the living patterns, but your shadow looks different from the ancestral designs, where theirs show the repetitive loops of unconscious behavior. Yours shows the spiral of conscious evolution. You are not just carrying the family patterns forward, but transforming them through your willingness to heal. The walls begin to show you visions of the future. Children who will inherit emotional intelligence instead of emotional suppression. Grandchildren who will grow up knowing they are worthy of love without having to earn it. Generations who will carry forward the family gifts of resilience and creativity while being free from the family burdens of shame and silence. This is the deepest magic available to any human being, the power to be the ancestor who breaks the chain of unconscious suffering, not by rejecting your lineage, but by healing it, not by escaping your family patterns, but by evolving them into their highest expression. As you prepare to leave this chamber, the patterns on the walls settle into new configurations, more beautiful and flowing than before. Your conscious attention has literally rewritten the energetic DNA of your family line. The ancestors smile in gratitude, and the future generations you will never meet send back waves of appreciation for the healing you've done on their behalf. You carry with you the understanding that you are not victim to your family patterns, but their conscious collaborator in transformation. Every choice you make from awareness instead of unconscious reaction is a gift to your entire lineage, a contribution to the evolution of love on this planet. The door to the next chamber glows with warm light, and you move toward it knowing that the healing you've done here will continue to ripple through time in ways you may never fully understand, but can trust are exactly what is needed. The sanctuary of deep listening. The fifth doorway opens into a space unlike any you've encountered so far. The walls here are not solid, but seem to be made of living sound itself, forming and reforming in patterns that respond to your breath, your heartbeat, your unspoken thoughts. This is the sanctuary where you learn to hear the voice you've been listening for your entire life, your own inner wisdom. In the center of this circular space sits a pool of water so still and clear it looks like liquid starlight. But as you approach, you realize the surface reflects not your physical appearance, but the sound of your truest self, the frequency you emit when you strip away all the noise of should-dos and have-tos and simply exist in your authentic essence. The silence here is not empty, but expectant, like the moment before music begins, or the pause between one breath and the next. It's the kind of silence that makes space for truth to emerge, for wisdom to surface, for the voice that usually gets drowned out by daily concerns to finally have its say. You kneel beside the pool, and as your reflection appears in its depths, you notice something extraordinary. The face looking back at you is yours, but it's you as you've never seen yourself, completely at peace, radiating a quiet confidence that comes not from having all the answers, but from trusting the process of discovering them. This reflected self begins to speak, but not with words you hear through your ears. This is the language of deep knowing, of cellular wisdom, of the intelligence that beats your heart and grows your hair and knows exactly how to heal a cut without your conscious intervention. This is your inner teacher, the one who has been trying to get your attention through hunches and gut feelings and moments of inexplicable knowing. You have been seeking outside yourself for the wisdom that lives within you. The reflection says, without moving its lips, every book you've read, every teacher you followed, every expert you've consulted has been pointing you back to the same place, the sanctuary of your own deep knowing. Thy words ripple across the water's surface, creating patterns that seem to encode themselves in your memory. You realize that every moment of confusion in your life has been an invitation to get quiet enough to hear this inner voice. Every time you felt lost, you were simply being called to stop looking outward and start listening inward. Around the pool, the walls of living sound begin to replay moments from your life when this inner wisdom tried to speak to you. Here is the time you knew, without logical reason, that a relationship was wrong for you, but you stayed because leaving seemed too difficult. There is the moment your gut told you to take a different path, but you chose the safer, more conventional route instead. The sounds don't carry judgment, only gentle observation. They remind you that your inner wisdom has never stopped speaking. You've simply learned to speak louder than it, to fill your mind with enough noise that its quiet voice gets drowned out by the chaos of daily concerns and social expectations. You lean closer to the pool, and your reflection leans closer too, until your foreheads almost touch the water's surface. In this position of deep intimacy with yourself, you can hear not just words, but the entire symphony of your inner life, the rhythm of your authentic desires, the melody of your deepest values, the harmony of what you know to be true when no one else is watching. The answers you seek are not hidden from you. Your reflection continues. They are written in the way your body responds to different choices, in the dreams that visit you when you finally rest, in the spontaneous thoughts that arise when you're not trying to think about anything at all. You understand now why this sanctuary exists in the deep places of your psyche. Your inner wisdom is not loud or demanding. It doesn't compete for attention or insist on being heard. It simply offers itself like a friend who sits quietly beside you until you're ready to share what's really happening in your heart. The walls around you begin to demonstrate the difference between inner wisdom and the other voices that live in your head. You can hear the anxious voice that catastrophizes about the future, the critical voice that judges everything you do, the people-pleasing voice that always asks what others want you to choose. But underneath them all, steady as a heartbeat, is the voice of your deepest knowing. This inner teacher doesn't speak in shoulds or musts, doesn't threaten you with consequences or promise you rewards. It simply offers information. This choice will move you toward what you really want. That decision will take you away from it. This person honors your energy. That situation drains it. This path feels alive with possibility. That one feels like walking through molasses. You place your hand on the water surface, and as the ripples spread outward, you remember all the times you did listen to this inner voice and how well things turned out when you did. The job you took based on a feeling rather than logical analysis. The person you were drawn to who became a lifelong friend. The creative project that made no sense but felt essential to pursue. Your reflection smiles, and you realize it's because you're finally understanding something crucial. Your inner wisdom is not separate from you, trying to guide you from the outside. It is you, the deepest layer of you, the part that remembers what you came here to do and be and create in this lifetime. The pool begins to show you scenes from possible futures, all the different ways your life could unfold, depending on how closely you listen to this inner voice. In one vision, you see yourself making decisions based on fear and external pressure, becoming increasingly disconnected from your authentic self. In another, you see yourself trusting your inner knowing, making choices that feel risky but right, living with the kind of integrity that creates deep satisfaction. The walls of sound around you shift into a new pattern, and suddenly you can hear the inner wisdom of everyone who has ever lived. A vast chorus of human knowing that includes your voice as an essential note. You understand that when you learn to trust your own deep listening, you're not just healing yourself, but contributing to the collective wisdom of humanity. This is why you came to this sanctuary. Your reflection explains, not to learn something new, but to remember something ancient, not to find wisdom outside yourself, but to recognize the wisdom that has always been your birthright. You sit back on your heels, feeling a shift in your relationship with decision-making, with uncertainty, with the whole question of how to navigate life. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who needs to figure everything out, you begin to understand yourself as someone who can trust the process of discovery, who can listen for guidance from the wise teacher that lives in the deepest part of your being. The sanctuary grows quieter still, if such a thing is possible, and in this profound silence, you can hear something you've never noticed before, the sound of your own soul humming. It's the frequency of your essential self, the vibration you emit when you're in complete alignment with who you really are. It's the sound of coming home to yourself. This humming grows stronger as you sit beside the pool and you realize it's not just a sound, but a navigation system. When you're moving in the direction of your authentic life, this inner humming gets stronger, clearer, more harmonious. When you're moving away from what's true for you, it becomes discordant, strained, or disappears altogether. Your reflection begins to fade, not because it's leaving, but because it's merging with you, integrating back into your conscious awareness. You understand that this sanctuary exists not just in this mystical inner realm, but everywhere you go, available whenever you create enough silence to hear what your deepest self wants to tell you. As you stand to leave, the pool's surface shows you one final image, yourself in your daily life, but now with a different quality of attention. You see yourself pausing before making decisions, creating small moments of silence in which to listen inward. You see yourself trusting the subtle guidance that comes not as dramatic revelation, but as quiet knowing. The walls of living sound part to reveal the next doorway, but you carry with you the most precious gift this sanctuary could offer, the understanding that you are never truly alone or without guidance. The teacher you've been seeking lives within you, speaks through you, breathes with you, and is always available when you remember to listen. You walk toward the next chamber with your inner humming a little louder, a little clearer, like a tuning fork that has found its true frequency. The voice of your deepest wisdom accompanies you now, not as separate advisor, but as integrated aspect of who you are when you dare to trust yourself completely. The observatory of the soul, the sixth passage, opens onto something impossible, a vast circular platform suspended in what appears to be deep space, surrounded by stars that pulse with familiar warmth. This is not the cold, distant cosmos of astronomy, but the intimate universe of your own soul, where every point of light represents some aspect of your inner life made visible. At the center of this cosmic platform stands a telescope unlike any earthly instrument. Its lens is made not of glass, but of crystallized dreams, and when you peer through it, you see not distant galaxies, but the landscape of your own becoming. This is where you gain perspective on the journey you've been traveling, where the seemingly random events of your life reveal their deeper patterns and purposes. You approach the telescope with reverence, sensing that what you're about to see will change how you understand your own story. As you adjust the focus, the first image that comes into view takes your breath away. You see your life from above, laid out like a luminous map, where every challenge you faced appears as a gateway, every loss as a redirection, every moment of suffering as a chrysalis, preparing you for transformation. The stars around you begin to sing, their light pulsing in rhythm with your heartbeat, and you realize that each one represents a choice point in your life, a moment when you could have gone in multiple directions. The brightest stars mark the times you chose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, love over fear, even when the outcome was uncertain. Through the telescope, you can see the threads that connect all these moments, the invisible web of meaning that makes sense of experiences that seemed random or cruel when you were living through them, the job you lost that led you to the path you really needed to be on, the relationship that ended just before you met someone who could love you more authentically, the failure that taught you resilience you didn't know you possessed. You adjust the telescope's focus again, and now you can see the future branches of possibility extending out from this moment like a luminous tree. You see that every choice available to you leads somewhere meaningful, that there are no wrong paths, only different routes to the same essential destination, becoming fully, authentically yourself. The platform beneath your feet is transparent, and looking down, you can see the chambers you've already passed through, arranged like a mandala of transformation. The room of forgotten dreams, the garden of shadows, the library of unspoken words, the chamber of ancestral patterns, the sanctuary of deep listening. Each one has contributed something essential to your wholeness, each one a necessary stop on this inner pilgrimage. But you also see chambers you haven't visited yet, rooms of possibility that await your exploration, the studio where you create without judgment, the hall where you dance with uncertainty, the garden where you plant seeds of intention and trust them to grow in their own time. The journey doesn't end here, but it spans into realms you haven't yet imagined. A figure approaches you across the starlit platform, and as they draw near, you recognize them as the wise teacher you've been carrying within you all along. But now they appear not as reflection or voice, but as presence, as the part of you that exists beyond personality and preference, beyond wound and healing, beyond story and meaning. This is your eternal self, the essence that has remained constant through every change, every growth, every seeming death and rebirth. Do you see now? They ask, their voice carrying the warmth of recognition. You have never been lost, only finding yourself through experience. You have never been broken, only breaking open to contain more light. You have never been alone, only learning to recognize the companionship of your own soul. Through the telescope, they show you moments from your life you had forgotten or dismissed as insignificant. The day you comforted a stranger without thinking about it. The time you chose honesty when a lie would have been easier. The moment you forgave someone, not because they deserved it, but because your heart needed to be free. All these small acts of authenticity shine like stars in the telescope's lens, revealing that you have been practicing love and courage all along, even when you thought you were failing. The wise teacher points to a constellation that forms the shape of a spiral, its stars arranged in perfect mathematical beauty. This is the pattern of growth, they explain, not linear progress from worse to better, but spiral evolution where you circle back to the same lessons at deeper levels, each time understanding more, integrating more, becoming more whole. You see how the challenges you thought you had overcome return in different forms, not as punishment, but as invitation to heal at even deeper levels. The childhood wound that shapes your adult relationships, appearing again and again until you finally understand its gift. The fear you thought you had conquered, presenting itself in new situations until you develop true courage rather than mere coping strategies. Every experience has been preparing you for this moment, the teacher continues. The moment when you finally see yourself clearly enough to love what you see. Not because you've become perfect, but because you've become real. Not because you've eliminated your struggles, but because you've learned to dance with them. The telescope shows you something else. The people whose lives have been touched by your existence, often in ways you never knew. The child who learned it was safe to be sensitive by watching you honor your own feelings. The friend who found courage to leave an unhealthy situation after seeing you choose yourself. The stranger who felt less alone because of your authentic presence in a moment when needed to know they weren't the only ones struggling. You understand now that your healing journey has never been just about you. Every step toward wholeness you've taken has created more space for others to do the same. Every pattern you've broken has weakened that pattern in the collective unconscious. Every time you've chosen love over fear, you've made it slightly easier for someone else to make the same choice. The stars around you pulse brighter, and you realize they're responding to this understanding. The universe itself seems to be celebrating your recognition that individual healing and collective healing are the same process, that your personal journey toward authenticity is your contribution to the evolution of consciousness on this planet. Through the telescope, you catch a glimpse of something that makes you catch your breath. You see yourself as you truly are, not as you appear to your critical mind or anxious thoughts, but as you exist in the eyes of unconditional love. You see a being of such beauty, such courage, such irreplaceable uniqueness, that you're momentarily overwhelmed by the magnitude of who you actually are. This is not spiritual bypassing or positive thinking. This is truth, seeing itself clearly for the first time. You are not perfect, but you are whole. You are not without struggles, but you are without fundamental flaw. You are not finished growing, but you are complete exactly as you are in this moment. The wise teacher smiles as they watch you take in this vision of yourself. Now you know what I have always known, they say, what the universe has always known, what your soul has been trying to tell you. Through every experience, every challenge, every moment of beauty and pain, you are love learning to recognize itself. You are consciousness, exploring its own nature. You are the answer to a question the cosmos asked when it decided to know itself through individual experience. As you step back from the telescope, the entire observatory begins to glow with soft light. The stars, the platform, the infinite space around you, all of it radiates with the recognition that has just occurred. You have seen yourself truly, and in that seeing, something fundamental has shifted. Not in your circumstances, but in your relationship to your circumstances. Not in your past, but in your understanding of how your past serves your becoming. The wise teacher begins to fade, not disappearing, but integrating, merging back into the wholeness of who you are. You understand that this observatory exists not in some distant realm, but in the expanded awareness that becomes available when you step back far enough to see the patterns, the meaning, the absolute perfection of your imperfect human journey. A new doorway appears at the edge of the platform, glowing with warm invitation. But before you move toward it, you take one last look through the telescope. What you see now is not your past or future, but the eternal present moment where all possibilities exist simultaneously, where every version of yourself that ever was or could be stands in loving witness to who you are choosing to become right now. You walk toward the next doorway, carrying the perspective of the observatory with you, understanding that you can return here whenever you need to remember the bigger picture, whenever you need to see your temporary struggles in the context of your eternal becoming, whenever you need to be reminded that you are exactly where you need to be on a journey that is unfolding with perfect intelligence and love. The garden of becoming. The seventh doorway leads you into a garden unlike any earthly paradise, where the very air shimmers with potential, and every plant seems to grow in fast forward, blooming and transforming before your eyes. This is the garden where you plant the seeds of who you're becoming, where intention meets possibility, where the future you're growing toward first takes root in the fertile soil of present moment awareness. The pathways here are made of smooth stones that seem to glow from within, each one inscribed with a word or phrase that represents some quality you're cultivating in yourself: courage, compassion, authenticity, trust. As you walk along these paths, you can feel the qualities seeping up through your feet, becoming part of your energetic foundation. At the garden center grows a tree that defies all natural law. Its roots reach deep into the earth of your past, drawing nourishment from every experience you've ever had, transforming even your most painful moments into soil for growth. Its trunk stands strong in the present moment, flexible enough to bend with change, but rooted enough to provide stability, and its branches reach into the future you're creating, bearing fruit that doesn't exist yet, but is already ripening with possibility. You approach this tree with wonder, and as you place your hand on its bark, you can feel the entire timeline of your existence flowing like sap through its living wood. Past, present, and future aren't separate here, but part of one continuous process of becoming. The tree whispers to you without words, and its message is simple. Growth is not about discarding who you've been, but about integrating every version of yourself into who you're becoming. Around the tree, you notice garden beds where different aspects of your future self are growing like exotic plants. Here is a patch where your creative expression is taking root, sending up shoots that look like poems made visible, songs given form, ideas crystallizing into art you haven't created yet, but somehow recognize as yours. Over there, a section where your capacity for love is expanding, growing from the small, careful love you learned was safe into something vast and generous and unafraid of being too much. The plants here bloom in colors that don't have names, representing forms of love you haven't experienced yet, but are preparing to give and receive. In another bed, your relationship with uncertainty is transforming from anxiety into adventure. What once looked like weeds of worry are revealing themselves to be exotic flowers of trust. Their strange beauty only visible when you stop trying to control their growth and learn to appreciate their unique contribution to the garden's ecology. You walk between these beds with the careful attention of a master gardener, understanding that becoming is an active process requiring both patience and participation. You can't force growth, but you can create conditions that support it. You can't control the timing, but you can trust the process. Near the garden's edge, you discover a greenhouse filled with seedlings that haven't been planted yet. These represent possibilities you haven't dared to consider, dreams you haven't allowed yourself to dream, versions of yourself that exist in potential but haven't been given permission to grow. The greenhouse protects these tender possibilities until you're ready to risk transplanting them into the open air of actual becoming. You pick up one small pot containing a seedling, so delicate it seems, made of light itself. The label reads, "The version of you who trusts your worth without needing external validation." As you hold this possibility in your hands, you can feel how much courage it would take to nurture this quality, how it would change everything about how you move through the world. But courage, you realize, is not the absence of fear, but the presence of love stronger than fear. And looking around this garden of becoming, you can feel that love everywhere, in the tree that transforms all your experiences into nourishment, in the beds where new capacities are growing, in the greenhouse where even your most impossible dreams are being kept safe until their season arrives. You plant the seedling in a spot where morning light will find it first, understanding that trusting your worth is not a destination, but a practice, not something you achieve once, but something you cultivate daily through small acts of self-kindness, through choosing thoughts that water rather than poison your sense of value. As you work in the garden, your hands in the rich earth of possibility, you notice that other gardeners are working nearby. These are all the versions of yourself you've been and could become, working together in the timeless space where transformation happens. Your younger self is here, planting the seeds of resilience you would need later. Your future self is here too, tending to dreams you haven't grown into yet. There's no competition between these gardeners, no sense that one version of you is better than another. They work together with the kind of cooperation that only love makes possible, each one contributing to the wholeness of who you are across all time and space. The garden shows you something profound about the nature of change. It's not about becoming someone else, but about becoming more yourself. Every quality you're cultivating here already exists within you in seed form. You're not adding foreign elements, but nurturing what has always been there, waiting for the right conditions to flourish. A gentle rain begins to fall, but instead of water, this rain is made of liquid starlight, each drop carrying the encoded wisdom of everyone who has ever grown beyond their circumstances, everyone who has chosen love over fear, everyone who has dared to become who they really are, despite pressure to remain safely small. As this starlight rain touches your skin, you can feel yourself absorbing not just moisture, but courage, not just nourishment, but inspiration. You are part of an ancient lineage of beings who refused to settle for less than their full flowering, who trusted the process of becoming even when they couldn't see where it was leading. The rain stops, and the garden sparkles with renewed life. Every plant seems to have grown in just those few moments, showing you how quickly transformation can happen when conditions are right, when you stop resisting and start receiving, when you align with, rather than fight against the natural process of your own evolution. You notice that your own reflection in the puddles of starlight looks different now, more vibrant, more alive, more like the person you're becoming, rather than the person you've been. This garden has not just shown you your potential, but has actually shifted your energy toward that potential, creating momentum in the direction of your highest possibilities. As you prepare to leave this garden of becoming, you gather seeds from plants that are already flourishing. These you'll carry with you back into your ordinary life, planting them in the soil of daily moments, watering them with attention and intention, trusting them to grow at their own pace in their own time. 3. At the garden center rustles its leaves in what sounds like applause, celebrating not what you might become, but what you're already becoming right now, in this moment, through the simple act of caring enough about your growth to show up for it with presence and love. A final doorway beckons from the garden's far end, but you take one last moment to breathe in the air of possibility, to feel yourself standing at the intersection of who you've been and who you're becoming, to appreciate the courage it takes to keep growing, even when you can't see the final destination. You walk toward the next threshold, carrying with you the understanding that becoming is not a project to complete, but a way of being to embrace, not a destination to reach, but a quality of presence to embody, as you continue the endless, beautiful work of becoming fully alive. The Hall of Integration. The 8th doorway opens into a vast, circular hall, where walls, ceiling, and floor all seem to be made of the same material. Crystallized awareness that shifts between transparency and reflection depending on where you direct your attention. This is the space where all the wisdom you've gathered, all the healing you've experienced, all the parts of yourself you've reclaimed begin to weave together into a new wholeness. In the center of the hall stands a loom larger than any earthly weaving device, its frame made of what looks like solid light. Upon it, a tapestry is being woven by invisible hands, and as you approach, you realize with awe that this tapestry is the story of your becoming, each thread representing some aspect of your journey through these inner chambers. Here is the golden thread of reclaimed dreams from the first room, now interwoven with the silver thread of shadow work from the garden of darkness. the deep blue strand of unspoken words dances with the green thread of ancestral healing, while the violet cord of inner wisdom spirals through everything, holding the pattern together with its quiet strength. But this tapestry is not complete. Whole sections remain unfinished, waiting for threads that can only be spun from the life you have yet to live, the choices you have yet to make, the love you have yet to give and receive. You understand that this integration is not a final state, but an ongoing process, a daily weaving of conscious awareness into the fabric of ordinary existence. Around the perimeter of the hall, you see alcoves containing mirrors, but these are not the harsh mirrors of self-judgment you've known in the outer world. These mirrors show you the truth of who you are becoming. Not perfect, but integrated. Not without struggle, but without fundamental brokenness. Not finished, but beautifully, courageously in process. In one mirror, you see yourself in your daily life, but now, with a quality of presence you've never carried before. You watch yourself making decisions not from fear or pressure, but from the deep listening you practiced in the sanctuary. You see yourself speaking truth with the courage you found in the library of unspoken words, loving yourself with the acceptance you discovered in the shadow garden. Another mirror shows you in relationship with others. But now you're neither hiding behind masks nor desperately seeking approval. You're simply present, authentically yourself, trusting that your real self is not too much or too little, but exactly what each moment needs. Some people are drawn to this authenticity. Others are challenged by it, but you're no longer trying to control their responses. A third mirror reveals you in creative expression, no longer paralyzed by perfectionism or fear of judgment, but moving with the fluid grace of someone who understands that creativity is not about producing masterpieces, but about allowing what wants to emerge through you to find its form. Your creations may be small or large, polished or rough, but they all carry the unmistakable signature of truth. As you walk between these mirrors, you notice that your reflection is becoming more consistent, more coherent across all of them. The fragmented self you once carried, different faces for different situations, is it resolving into something more whole? Not that you're the same in every context, but that you're authentically yourself in every context, adapting without abandoning your core truth. In the center of the hall, near the great loom, you find a chair that seems to have been waiting specifically for you. It's built to fit your exact proportions, crafted from materials that feel familiar beneath your hands. This is the chair of integration, where you sit not to receive more wisdom, but to become a living expression of all you've learned. As you settle into this chair, you feel every chamber you visited flowing through your awareness like a river of remembrance. The dreams you've reclaimed, the shadows you've befriended, the words you found, the patterns you've healed, the inner voice you've learned to trust, the perspective you've gained, the future you're growing toward, all of it streams through your consciousness, not as separate experiences, but as facets of one great awakening. This is integration, not adding more to who you are, but recognizing what was always there, not becoming someone new, but becoming someone real, not fixing what was broken, but celebrating what was always whole, just hidden beneath layers of conditioning and protection and forgetting. The loom begins to move more quickly, the invisible hands weaving your story with increasing speed and intricacy. You understand that every moment of your life from now on will add new threads to this tapestry, that every choice you make will contribute to the pattern of your becoming, that every day offers new opportunities to weave consciousness into the fabric of existence. But you also understand something even more profound. You are not just the subject of this tapestry, but one of the weavers. Every moment you choose love over fear. Every time you speak truth instead of hiding. Every instance you trust your inner wisdom. Over external pressure, you're actively participating in the creation of your own story. The hall fills with a gentle light that seems to emanate from within rather than from any external source. This is the light of integration itself, the radiance that emerges when all parts of the self stop fighting each other and begin working together toward the same goal, the full expression of who you really are. In this light, you can see how everything you've experienced has been necessary, how